Hello all, welcome to the Consistently OK podcast, a podcast where we dive into all things pop culture related from comics to films and everything in between. My name's Luke.
I'm Nick.
Join us every week for a podcast that doesn't set its bar too high or too low, but rather keeps it at a consistently OK level for your enjoyment.
Will I say welcome? Will I not say welcome? It's tough to know. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on the Consistently OK pod. This week's episode, we're going to talk about video games. It's the first volume that we're going to do. So we're going to cover, in this specific volume, we're going to cover mine and Nick's favourite video games from our long, young playing careers.
Yeah.
So, all good, Nick?
All good here, man. Thanks.
Excellent,
How about you?
Excellent. Yeah, all good. Excited to talk about video games. Just before we start recording this podcast, we were talking that you are now a PlayStation 5 owner.
Yeah.
Which is
it happened.
A massive milestone in your video game career.
Yep, they're a real thing. It's in front of me right now, and it's great.
You have one. I am still on the hunt. One day, Nick. One day.
It will happen. They exist.
It will.
Weirdly, it was kind of sad because I sold my PS4 to part pay for it, and it was quite a sad thing to like format my PS4 and send it on its way.
I don't tend to get rid of my old consoles. I tend to keep them all
I usually
away.
do, but because I'm in London and I'll be traveling back home at some point, I was like, I can't actually travel with two consoles.
No, so one has to go.
Yeah, so the PS5.
I suppose if you're going to do it, then with the PlayStation 5, with everything pretty much being backward compatible and things like that, it's not the worst time to get rid of one, I guess.
No.
Although I've got my PlayStation 3 and 2, but I don't think I've used any of them since I got my PlayStation 4. Like, I tend not to go back. It's more the Nintendo consoles that I'd go back to, if anything.
Nice. Classic.
Anyway, so what we're going to do, we're going to talk about a few games each. We don't know what we have chosen as our favorite games of all time. So we might have the same game. So if we do, we'll probably laugh as we say them out loud. But we'll give a little bit of insight as to why they're our favorite games. Now, just to say, these are not necessarily, although I think all of my games were very well received, actually, but they're not based on critical acclaim or anything. It's just, I guess it's nostalgia. The games that I've picked anyway are ones I have a huge affiliation to that reminds me of being younger, or just ones I just sunk a lot of hours into and could easily just play them again and again and again. Is that similar to what you've done, Nick, or are we way off the point?
Yeah, I think that's pretty similar. Like, I'm pretty sure all of mine are critically well received. I do, and I think you do as well, have a list of honourable mentions.
Yes, I have some honourable mentions. It's good. It seems like we both read this week's brief for what this podcast will be, which is fantastic.
I also want to stress as well that even though I'm listing 3 games here, which are in my favourites list, there isn't an order. Like, I couldn't say which one is number 1 and which one's number 2.
No, mine aren't in order either. Mine aren't in order. I actually did a tiny bit of research, and when I say research, I mean I found out the dates that they were released. Not the dates, the year they were released. So
more than me.
I've actually written notes on for this podcast. So I've got 4. So I guess if I start, then it will flow nicely.
Yeah.
So the first game, it's hard to know which one to start with because, like you said, there aren't any order. But I think we'll just go with one that we've actually done a podcast on before. So we're retreading over old ground, which is The Last of Us, which came out in 2013 by Naughty Dog. Huge game. We did a podcast, if you've not listened to already. Our first podcast that we did, the Consistently OK podcast, was The Last of Us 2. And we touched upon The Last of Us, obviously, during that podcast. But to give it its own light, Nick, how good is The Last of Us? It's so good, isn't it?
So good. Yeah, I've got a real inkling to play the first one again, especially with the TV show coming.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Like, re-go through it, and especially with part 2. Actually, a friend of mine just finished part 2, and I mean, all these months later, I've still got so much to say about it. It's such an interesting story. The gameplay is really cool. Characters are just so well crafted that I think it's always going to be a game that I think when you've played it, it's always going to stick around in your kind of honorable mentions or favorite list or whatever, because it really does leave an impact.
I think for me, it's if someone was to talk about it now, if I was at work or I was listening to a podcast and someone said they talked about The Last of Us rather, I would be thinking, you know what, I could definitely play that again. It doesn't take much to convince me to put this game on and give it a go, because we'll give it another go. I love the story. It was my friend Sean who lent it to me originally, and he said you have to play this game. And I recently just got a PlayStation 3, I think, and I thought I just finished Arkham Asylum, something else as well, and he lent me this game. He's had nothing else to play. He was like, you really enjoy it, and I remember playing it, and the first few minutes I thought, I have no idea because there's a lot of walking around but you got the beginning, but obviously with the initial threat coming about and speeding off in the car and everything. When it gets to the future and Joel's sort of grumpier and everything, I thought, okay, I'll give it a bit longer. And then you just sink into the game. You just can't not enjoy it. And it plays really well. And the graphics were very good at the time.
Yep.
Even better now, obviously, with the remastered version. But I think the story is just so strong. And the way Joel and Ellie, the characters, grow and progress it's just such a good game, which is why it is so well received and why everyone loved The Last of Us 2, or obviously they wanted to play Last 2. Obviously it had a few negative things in it which are ridiculous, which you can hear all about in our other podcasts.
Yeah.
But it's a strong game and I really, really like it. And that's what I'm basing this list on, really, is like replay value as well. So like I said, I could easily play this game again tomorrow and I would enjoy it as much as I think I did the first time.
Yeah.
So not too much in depth on that one because we have covered it all before, but I can't not have a favourite game list and not have The Last of Us on it.
Yep.
So awesome game, Nick.
Mine, Last of Us is on my honourable mentions list, just purely
Not
because
good
we'd
enough.
covered it. Just purely because we'd covered it before. And
You did not read the brief.
This is true.
Okay. Your turn. You tell me one.
Okay. Ooh, tough. I'm going to just go for the first one on my list. It's a game called Alan Wake. Don't know if you ever played it.
I feel like I've heard of Alan Wake.
Okay. So it's from Remedy, who made Max Payne 1 and 2. And
it does ring a bell.
they've recently made Control, and they made another game on Xbox One called Quantum Break. Alan Wake was exclusive for Xbox 360 and PC. And
all right, no, definitely not played it.
Honestly,
Xbox is a lame.
Alan Wake is an exceptional piece of storytelling. It's influenced by Stephen King, by Twin Peaks, basically anything that's kind of supernatural, murder mystery, small town America, East Coast kind of thing. And you play as a writer called Alan Wake, which is probably why I love it.
I'm Googling it now.
It's great.
I've never seen this game in my life.
It's so cool. It's told in episodes. So it almost plays out like a TV show.
Okay.
And it was right at the time, I think, when TV was, bursting into kind of being more than just, like a 20 episode thing or whatever. It was, you could get 13 episodes of something that's like a deep drama. And Alan Wake sort of tapped into this kind of territory. And each episode would sort of end with a song, which would be really kind of emotional. And then you'd have the next episode open up. It would be like previously on Alan Wake. So if you'd gone away from the game for a little bit, it would kind of recap what happened.
It's like the Telltale games. They did that, didn't they?
Yeah, it was very much like that. And it was just so smart. The horror in it was cool. It was a nice thriller. It was well narrated. The acting was great. The world was really cool. It's a third-person adventure game. And it really kind of captured me. And I think it sort of got me around that time where I was kind of thinking, in terms of gaming, I think I played a lot of first-person shooters growing up, or maybe not growing up, but sort of like later on teen years kind of thing. And Alan Wake sort of captured this desire for, third-person storytelling is actually arguably a little bit more in-depth. Like we said, when you get to things like The Last of Us, that game I don't think would work first-person. I think it works third-person because of how it's crafted. And I think Alan Wake is very much the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, Alan Wake, it's always stuck with me. They did 2 pieces of DLC for it, which were fantastic. And I think Sam Lake, who's the writer on it, is just an absolute genius. I'm always envious of the worlds he creates. And I know that Alan Wake sort of picked up like a cult following because every game they've done since has sort of hinted at more to come. Specifically with their latest game, Control, as a DLC for it that very much places Alan Wake in that world. And I think you'd really enjoy Alan Wake. That's the thing. If it ever came onto PlayStation, I really recommend it because I think you'd really get on with it because it's just such a well-told story and the gameplay is really fun. It's the kind of thing where
sounds really good.
You've got like enemies who are basically plagued by like a darkness, and you use like a torch to burn the darkness out of them, and then you shoot them. It's just really fun gameplay, and yeah, it's very, very cool. So
nice. I will check it out. I'll check it out and look at it and watch the trailer and everything like that. Yeah. I'll probably end up doing what we said last week on YouTube and going down rabbit holes. I'll probably watch someone play the whole game, and then I can tell you what I think.
Yeah, please do.
Nice. That's really like out of left field. I did not. That game would never. I could have guessed 500 games, and that never would have come up because I didn't even know about it. So I'm glad we didn't do the 500 game guessing game. Let's skip that one. Okay, so my next one is one that I guarantee a lot of people have either not played or they obviously played it and loved it. It's the one from my childhood. Came out in 2000 on the N64. It's a wrestling game.
Oh, yes.
WWF No Mercy.
Quality.
I don't know. There's not been a better wrestling game than WWF No Mercy. It is the ultimate wrestling game. It is the best wrestling game of all time. It was so damn good, Nick, when it came out.
Yeah.
Because they had one before it called WrestleMania 2000. And the wrestlers are a bit bulky. And it played quite well. It was a good game. And then they released technically a sequel from, I think it's THQ, I think, are the developers.
Yeah, they used to have the license.
And it was just at the right time. It was like Attitude Era. There was sort of, you had People's Champion Rock, you had Stone Cold, you had Triple H, all these cool wrestlers at the time. And this game just played so well. And all the finishes really worked. It had really cool entrances as well. Like they were all quite generic when they were actually coming down to the ring. But like the Brood would come out of their fire. And the music was pretty good. I don't think they had all the licenses necessarily. And it was very, like the beats were very heavy. But it was amazing. The Royal Rumble gameplay was so good. Did you play it? You must have played it.
I think I played a little bit of it. Because I never had an N64. My kind of wrestling games specifically was Attitude, which I think is very similar to No Mercy from memory. Like having
Attitude
side by side. I think it was after it though.
Attitude came out before. If it's the one I'm thinking of, there was like a Raw is War game, which is like the one that had the headbangers in it, and the crowd were like, "Real men wear skirts," like consistently replayed throughout the gameplay, even when the headbangers went in there. Then there was the Attitude game. Then I think there was like one in the middle, and then there was WrestleMania 2000, and then there was No Mercy, and then it went over to PlayStation, and they had the SmackDown games.
Okay.
I believe there might have been an Attitude game in between. I think Xbox had a couple of games as well. So,
okay, so Attitude, I've just Googled, came out in 1999 for PlayStation.
And then this came out in 2000. Yeah. So they probably had side-by-side games, didn't they? PlayStation 1 or 2.
Yeah. It was on 1.
And then N64. Yeah. So this was the N64. This is what all the cool kids are playing the N64 with the crazy control. And it was so good. There was not, every time I had mates over from school, it was No Mercy. Me and my older brother Ryan played a lot of No Mercy. The story mode was fantastic. It was so good. It was like everything you want, like going through the Royal Rumble, getting to WrestleMania, and you relive different moments from what was storyline in wrestling the year before. It's just so good. Even had like proper scripts, and no one talked, obviously, because it wasn't that advanced, but it was so good. And it played so well. And even now, I've played some of the later PlayStation games, like the 2K games. And they're good, and you can do a lot of crazy shit. But nothing has a patch on No Mercy. If they released like a mini N64, that game was on it, I'd be getting it just for that game.
Day one.
I have an N64 still, but I don't know where No Mercy is either. Either my brother Ryan has it somewhere stored away, but man, I love that game. It's so good. And if you've not played it, Nick, then you've missed out. I know you played it a little bit, but if you've not completed the championship mode to get to the end, it's just the best. So good.
It's the
very excited to talk about No Mercy.
Someday I can play it. Hopefully someday.
It's so good. And when the Royal Rumble happened, then the wrestler would run out and they would like pan in on their face, and they just very generic face, but they just look so ready to rumble. And everyone had it was, I think, because WrestleMania 2000 had a good roster, but then this is the Dudley Boys had just come into it, and the Hardy Boys were jumping off ladders.
Quality.
And it was so good, and everything like the power meter that you get normally. Obviously, people can't see, but I'm actually doing a grapple move as I talk about No Mercy.
Yes.
So it was good. It was a really good game. It's up there. Well, it's not up there. It is the best wrestling game. If anyone has an issue with that, then they can challenge me to a wrestling match. A game of it, yeah. That makes more sense. Not a wrestling match, a game of it. So good. I love it. It's up there. That's definitely. I think it was critically acclaimed anyway. But nostalgia-wise, I played that game so much. I think it crashed quite a lot. We played it that much. The cartridge got a bit messed up. Used to stall at a Cactus Jack Triple H match every time. So just epic game.
Nice. I do have fond memories playing wrestling games. And then, yeah, the last few that I've played, I don't know if they've just made grappling really complicated.
Yeah, they have. Because didn't I give you a wrestling game, didn't I?
Yeah, and I started it, I was like, this is awesome. And then I got so far and I was like, the grappling is just so complicated. Like, I can't.
Could go back to No Mercy because you wiggle the joystick a little bit, you smash A, all of a sudden you're pedigreeing someone on a chair. Just genius. So good. They made it too complicated now, but just the best of times was that wrestling game. It was a bit weird because then it was like all the SmackDown stuff, and the entrances are really weird. I think me and Harry spoke about it before. You and Harry are maybe on a podcast, and like you have the wrestler coming out, but it's just the Titantron video in the background, so you don't actually see them coming to the ring. Just step too far, that is, Nick.
Yeah,
absolute bullshit.
I think Harry said that there's one that's one of the SmackDown games. I think is his favorite because it's the one where they
Undertaker and Kane.
Yeah, but they do show the entrances. It's not where it's the Titan.
Yeah,
I can't remember which one.
Yeah, I think he likes it when the Brothers of Destruction come out. That's his bag. He loves that. All right, so that is enough fanboying over WWF No Mercy. What's next?
Next on my list, I feel like this could be on yours as well. God of War.
No, it was close. Wow. It's on my honourable mentions actually, but it's not because I didn't know how many slots we had, so I kind of went for two more recent games ish, and then two kind of old school games.
Cool,
but good. It's on my honourable mentions, yeah. But I've only played through God of War once, so I think if I would love to probably play it through again now. But yeah, you tell me why it's on your list.
It's on my list to play again on the PS5 actually because they've had the update for it. So I do want to go through and see how it plays on next gen kind of thing. But
yeah,
I'd never played a God of War game before. I'd always thought they looked really cool, but I'd never got around to playing one. I think the closest I got was probably God of War 3. I think I was close to buying it one day, and then I can't remember why it wasn't in stock or something, and I didn't end up getting it. But yeah, the latest one, I just remember the trailers grabbing me because they had they completely changed the combat and they changed the style of the game, it looked like, and I just thought it looks really interesting, and so picked it up kind of thinking I could love this, I could hate it, I don't know, because I haven't experienced one before. And it was just so early on that the game did what The Last of Us did, where it was just they're telling a story in a whole other level of video game narrative, from just the acting to the actual gameplay, like swinging the axe and throwing the axe, and that's so satisfying.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It's one of the most satisfying things in a game ever is throwing the axe,
Yeah.
isn't it? And getting it's kind of, it's like Thor, isn't it? Just imagine throwing Thor's hammer in it.
Yeah.
You anticipating it coming back, but that is, I just used to launch the axe,
Yeah.
whatever, just so I could just walk away and just grab it again.
Yeah.
Again, I'm doing the action again. I mean, you can see me, sure, but no one else can. That's the point.
It's just so, from a gameplay point of view, it is really addictive. It's just easy to sit down and play. But then the story to it kept giving me these moments of emotional hits in the same way that The Last of Us does. And it, especially so at the end, the end is what knocked it from being, this is a great game, to this is in my top 5. The last section of the game is just incredible on every front in terms of visuals, the way the story's kind of careened these characters into what they're becoming. In that Kratos has such a history, which even if you've not played the other games, that you're still aware of it. I think that's one of the smart things about the game. It still gives you the sense that there's this heavy history behind him. And
it's a good jumping on point if you've never played it before as well.
Yeah,
God of War is good.
So good. And the kind of story around, I'm trying not to spoil it just in case, because honestly that last section, for anybody who hasn't played it, needs to just experience it. But the story between him and Atreus is really heartfelt, and the core premise of the story that it opens up with, this isn't a spoiler because this has definitely just been out there, but opens up with their like his mother dying, and the story just being that they're going to take her, is it her ashes? Is that what it is? To a certain place, and that's the story. The story is just, you're going from one place to another to deliver these ashes. And it's so simple but so effective and so emotional as you kind of go through the story between the two of them. Yeah, it makes me want to play it again. Just thinking of
it's the story. I mean, it's a hugely story-driven game with a lot of action in, but that's, like you said, that and The Last of Us, those kind of games, they're the ones that stick with you for a long time, and obviously make them playable again in the future, because you just want to experience it again, don't you? It's why we both said we played The Last of 2 again quite quickly after, because you're just ready to, you just want to play it again straight away.
Yeah,
it's a great game. I really enjoyed it.
The visuals as well. There were so many things in there that just took me by surprise, like a minor spoiler, but not major. When you're approaching somewhere and you're in like a woodland area, you're kind of like, oh, this is just like a normal woodland area, and then the ground sort of stands up and it's like this creature with like a tree on top of it, and you kind of go inside and it's a home. That kind of stuff. I was like, this is incredible. Like just visually, game design, everything. Phenomenal.
I think you can really sing. I would love to play it on the PlayStation 5. I think it's one of those games where if you were to turn all your lights off and you just had the screen on, it's one of those games I definitely just like felt like I was, especially with the scenery and the visuals, like you feel like you're there in a way. Like it's very crisp, it's very fresh.
Yeah.
Like especially the woodland bits and the breath and everything when they're with the characters. It's very well done. Really good game, and I really look forward to the sequel.
Yeah, I hope that the first proper teaser trailer just opens up with boy. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, one of the guys at work said that to me every day after playing it for about 3 months. Boy. So did you see him when they won an award and they were on stage together?
Yeah.
And the guy who played Kratos was like, boy. I've said it too many times now. Cool. Great. Good. Any more on that, or should we move on?
I'm good.
Good. So my next one is going to be, I was just thinking, all I could think about when you're talking about how good the story is, it's like, it's great stories like Last of Us, God of War, WWF No Mercy. You're in it for the stories, aren't you? So the next one, I'm just going to, before I go into like a kind of a very story-driven one again, although this is very story-driven, but it's an N64 one again. It's an old one. It's 1996. Ooh. It's Super Mario 64.
Okay.
Which was the first game that came out on the N64. So when the N64 came out, I was quite young, very young. My older brother, Ryan, he got an N64. So I think at the time we got it, and I think we got a game each, if I remember right. And he got Super Mario 64. My brother Aaron got Wave Race 64, which was like a racing game. And I can't remember what I got. I got something, I imagine it was something very kid-friendly. I know like the second game I ever got was this game called Glover 64, which was basically just this glove. He had to move, he had carried around a ball and he had to move from A to B.
Amazing.
But I got something really, really kid-friendly, obviously. But I used to watch both my brothers play N64. We used to play them together. Because you had 4 ports on the N64, so you could have 4 controllers, and my mum and dad got a controller each, obviously, so we could play 3-player a lot on games.
Nice.
I remember watching him play Mario 64, my brother Ryan, and it was so good. It was so fun to watch, and we had like all the guides and everything like that, and it was the best. It was one of the funnest games I remember playing as a young kid, and obviously when he had done a level, I was then allowed to do a level. So not a different level, the level he had just done. That was the rule.
Amazing.
And it was really good fun because obviously I was quite young. So although it's not a scary game, actually it is a pretty fucking scary game. I say it's quite a lot when I talk about Super Mario 64, but there's the third world is called, I think it's called Jolly Roger Bay, if I remember right. And there's this fucking eel that's hiding in this pipe. He's sticking his little head out actually, and you swim down and it just darts out at you. I've actually replayed it recently on the Nintendo Switch because it got re-released and repackaged as this Mario All-Stars game. And I used to be really scared of water levels in games when I was younger.
Okay.
Probably said this before. So I used to be like, I don't want to go in the water because you can't escape quick enough. So if you go into these water and you go too far, you think, oh God, because on land, obviously you can jump out of the way and everything. And I remember seeing my brother play it and thinking, oh, it wasn't that bad. But when it came to my turn to play, I was like, I can't face this eel right now. So luckily with Super Mario games, you collect a bunch of stars and then jump through different paintings it is in this game. Have you played it before?
I don't think I have. I think the only kind of Super Mario game I played was Super Mario Galaxy. Played a bit of that on the Wii.
Oh man, you gotta play Super Mario. Next time you visit here, you can just take my Nintendo Switch and you can it won't take you long to play. It's such a basic game. But anyway, you jump through these paintings into these worlds. It's in Peach's castle. Of course, she's been kidnapped, as always.
Typical.
By Bowser. And
Love
anyway,
Bowser.
you could collect different stars to get into different paintings, so you can kind of navigate your way around. I think you can complete the game even without going into this Jolly Roger Bay. But anyway, Nick, old man now, I conquered my fear and I beat that eel, and I was very proud of myself. But I'm just going off on one now. Stupid fucking eel. But it's such a good game. I've got so many good memories from playing it over and over again. And at the time, it was the first time not only you had Mario in 3D, but you had Bowser in 3D. And he's massive in this game, or he was at the time. So you finally get to see him. You have 3 boss battles with him over the course of the game, but it's such a simple game because you just have to run around to the back of him, and he's very slow, and grab him by the tail and throw him into these bombs. But at the time, it felt epic. Like, holy shit! Look at Bowser. He is an absolute monster.
I do love Bowser. He's awesome.
And it's all sort of just really blocky 3D, but again, at the time, it was a game changer. And any reviews you read about it is just, at that time, it was just a big deal, like a huge deal. Like if you see Lara Croft Tomb Raider and you look at her and she's just super blocky.
Yeah.
Same deal as that, really. It's just an amazing game. And even now, it holds up. I played the whole way through, like I said, recently. And yeah, like the camera angles are a bit difficult and they don't kind of follow Mario, but what made it so good is still there and the nostalgia is still there. It's really, really fun. If you've not played a lot of Mario, it's probably not your cup of tea, but if you're a big Mario fan, then it's great.
It does always like pop up on kind of any top platforming game lists. There's always the talk of Mario 64, so I assume it is good.
I think it's one of the best rated games of all time.
Gosh.
Probably, I mean, now, I think the revamped version, which, I mean, it's a remastered version, but it's literally, other than the controls, there's not much different to it. It looks exactly the same. I think that's what kind of pissed a lot of people off with the new re-release of it, because they wanted the camera angles fixed, and it would have been nice to see Mario as a like a well-rounded 3D character. But again, that would take a lot of away from it as well, because it is what it is.
Yeah.
But even that got a really good review. So that re-release of it, because I think people that had played it originally in '96 and the few years after that, it was just the N64 was a really big deal when it came out, because I don't know if the N64 came out before the PlayStation or just after the PlayStation.
Yeah, I think it was probably around the same time, because if Attitude came out on both N64 and PlayStation,
it would have been around the same time.
Yeah, so it was
two different worlds, wasn't it? Because PlayStation was quite a bit darker with its releases and its games, but N64 was just powerful, colourful.
Yeah,
I watched I was thinking about other games like Diddy Kong Racing, which is like Donkey Kong, and all those games around that time. Banjo Kazooie, just bright colours, platformers. Whereas PlayStation had completely everything's going on other than Spyro. So I loved it. So I really, really like Mario 64. It would always be on my top 10 list, whatever I was doing, because it's just that kind of game. I would think my brothers were here as well. They would say the same thing. Not here. They're still around. They're not dead. Just if they were on this podcast, they would say the same thing. So yeah, that's that.
Good. I'll add it to my list.
What's your last of your three?
So last of my three it's technically a trilogy, but I'm only going to talk about one.
I wonder what this is, because I thought maybe it was one of the ones I was going to talk about, but then I moved it to my honourable mentions. But my trilogy is not trilogy now; it's a quadrilogy. So what is it?
I think I know what that is, and that is also in my honourable mentions list.
Okay.
So this is BioShock. So
good stuff.
I love the first one. I think the second's okay, but the one that I really want to talk about is Infinite.
Yeah.
The first BioShock blew me away because it's such a clever story, again, in the same way that God of War is really good and The Last of Us is really good. It does storytelling in a interesting way, and it sort of, I think what I like about all these games is that it really makes you feel like you're experiencing a story rather than you as the player are the person. And I think with a lot of first-person games, this is probably what I was trying to say earlier on, a lot of first-person games, it's hard to tell a story where you feel like you're experiencing someone else's story. I think you generally feel like it's your story because it's first person, so you're immersed in it, and it's you watching the events happen, as opposed to them happening to someone else. Yep. BioShock, you spend 90% of the game thinking it's that kind of thing, like you're immersed in this world and you're experiencing it all, and the world's amazing. The fact that it's a city underwater, and the whole opening scene of the first one's great. And then the clincher of the first one is where they just kind of remind you that what you've been doing isn't of your own decisions, it's of someone else's decisions because of a key phrase. So clever. Infinite then, which is my favorite of the three, I replayed it 2 or 3 years ago because I think when I first played it, I was like, that was great, but I don't remember it being this talking point that I'd seen it be in recent years. So I replayed it, and about halfway through, I was kind of thinking, oh, I get why it's a talking point now, and I'm starting to love it more. And it's the relationship that it has with like time travel. It's how it connects the characters together through like different existences. And so when you get to the end and there's this epic scene where you just see loads of different versions of the same event happening, the game just hits this other level of storytelling, like Last of Us or God of War or whatever, because it's doing that through and through, where it's kind of going, you are very much the player in this situation. You don't have any control over what is ultimately going to happen. You just have to sit and experience it like a story or a film or whatever. And it just blew me away playing that again. And equally again, in Infinite, they created such a cool world that it was a city in the sky. Yeah, just so cool. Really nice visuals. All the weaponry's awesome. Yeah, just really, really love Infinite. There's also a scene like really early on where you're sort of experiencing the city and you're getting to see what it's like in the clouds and stuff. And this group of, it's like a barbershop band type thing, just floats up and they're singing God Only Knows by the Beach Boys. and it's just
All
one
right.
of the coolest gaming moments that they just like float up in front of you and then just away singing. It's really, really cool.
I've not played the third one.
Honestly, give it a whirl because it's so smart.
I only played it recently. My friend, he gave me the remastered trilogy.
Yep.
So I think I played the first one just before Spider-Man came out on the PlayStation 4. And then that took over my life. And then I think I played the second one.
Yep.
And then I must have got God of War.
Nice.
Must have been. And then I just never got around to the third one. It's still, like, I can actually see it now. I just haven't got around to playing it. But on your glowing recommendation, I will move it up the list.
I try not to spoil much there just in case. But yeah, I feel like it is one of those games that a lot of people, I don't know whether it came out, like we said before, with other games, where it comes out at a time when other games are out, so people sort of skip it. But it is really, really smart. And yeah, it feels like it does that similar level of storytelling that the first game did. But for me, it's just better because of there's like a real emotional payoff. Yeah. So
is it the same characters in the third one though?
No. There's a connection. There is something that binds them together. But yeah, it's not the same characters. It's just so clever. Very clever.
I will check it out. I will move it up my list, like I said. Awesome.
Good man.
Okay, so my last one then, before we just go through our honourable mentions, is something we have also talked about on a podcast. But again, it might be, I think it's probably my favourite game ever.
Cool.
Because of how many times I've played it and just how much the story blew me away and how invested I was in the characters. But it's Arkham City.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Which I love. Like, I love Arkham City. I love it more than Arkham Asylum and Arkham Knight and DLCs. I love it more than the Spider-Man game. I'm a huge comic fan, obviously, as people will probably know now. But Spider-Man is my go-to superhero, and Batman is very close behind that. But I loved Arkham City. I think the reason I feel so closely about it, or feel so affectionately about it, I have no idea. I love it, Nick. It's okay to say I love it. Passionate. Bam, that's the word. When it came out originally, my wife was doing a master's in Brighton. I didn't have a job. I had some money behind me, but didn't have a job. And I just remember thinking, right, I have to get some work. But nothing was really going on then. It was just as like the recession had kicked in and things like that. And it was like still in the aftermath of the recession in England at the time. So there was nothing really going job wise. I was really there just to support my wife, who was, like I said, studying. And I got Arkham City. It came out like the second day that I moved back to England. And I just played it so much. I was also looking for work, Nick. I'm not an idiot. But I played.
You were looking for work in Arkham City?
I was looking for work in Arkham City, Just trying to fight crime. Wasn't paying well. But anyway, I played it through very quickly, and it was just at a time where there was not a lot going on. It was a game that I enjoyed so much. And even after, I did get a job pretty soon after, but I just played it again and again. And obviously the comics building up to it. And I loved Arkham Asylum, and I love the story of Arkham City. I love the fact that it's got so many good villains in it that weren't in the first game, that were linked in the first game. You've got Two-Face, you've got Catwoman, you've got Riddler's in it again, you've got Poison Joker, Deadshot. They're all in there, and there's just so much to do. And it was such a big jump from Arkham Asylum, which I thought was a huge game in terms of scope, even though it's just based in the asylum. But then all of a sudden you're in the city, and you can see actually Gotham all around it and everything. And I just felt they just nailed it. I think the twists were perfect, the way it was done at the end. I think the fact that you thought you were probably nearer to the end as he's kind of going through up to see to Hugo Strange's like lair or workspace. I don't know.
Yep.
And then there's another twist that comes after that, and then there's another twist after that. I just think they really did their homework on how they were going to do it. And Paul Dini, who wrote the script for it, who's a comic writer for Batman before, I think he nailed it as well. And Rocksteady knocked it out of the park with the way it looked and the way it felt. And it's so cool being Batman in those games. And I think it was lacking a little bit in Arkham Knight because I don't think you got enough of the being Batman and the stealth and those kind of missions. But Arkham City was the best of what there was in Arkham Knight and what Arkham Asylum did. And in terms of a superhero game, it just ticked all the boxes. And I really, really like it, if that has not been made clear. But it does actually make me think about boss battles. And they're smart in Arkham City because there's different things you have to do, like the Mr. Freeze fight and everything. And but what I was going to say about God 4 is the boss battles in that were fantastic.
Yeah, they were actually really
like super epic.
Yeah, massive.
But I love just such a good game. Obviously, I know you're a fan of it. We did a podcast on the whole Arkham series, which you can follow. You should find in our back catalogue. Yeah, but you're a huge fan of it as well, aren't you, Nick?
Yeah, Arkham City, I definitely agree, is the best of the three, and it is for that reason that the story is just so well crafted, and a big part of that is that they get all the villains right. They understand all the villains and give them all space to be their own people, and everything about that game is just really well done. So
it's probably a bit crazy to say it's my favorite game ever, but I'm talking about from like a personal, like how a game made me feel and playing it through and everything, because there are definitely like better, well-received games that I've played that I've really enjoyed as well. But Arkham City is like my personal top game.
I'm surprised the Glove game isn't your top personal game.
I mean, Glover 64 had its moments, Nick. I'm not gonna lie. There was a water level though, which was pretty tough going, but you didn't actually have to go fully into the water.
Okay.
No water levels. Although there is a bit in Arkham City actually, where you have to go across in the museum.
Yeah.
To go right across to get to Penguin and then Solomon Grundy, which is awesome because that's the thing about Arkham City. They were just bad guys just popping up every now and again, and just hints like the Calendar Man thing, like just
so cool.
Like you can change your date on your PlayStation, and then there's a whole other section. You've got like a teaser for Hush in there. They're all there, Nick. It's just something good.
Yeah,
and I was invested. So I love it. So that's our sort of top picks. We'll run through a few honourable mentions, and we can dip in a little bit if needed. But do you want me just to tell you what my honourable mentions list is?
Yeah, let's run through it. If they're on mine, I'll say.
So some of these are really random. Again, purely on nostalgia / what I love. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Oh my god, that was on mine.
Nice. Is it number 2 or number 1 or 3? Which one was it? Number
2.
Such a good game. Soundtrack's
amazing. All the levels were great. Yeah, just so good.
So good. Have you played the remastered version yet?
I haven't, not yet. It's on my list, but I had
stuff.
The games.
I think I can't remember if we messaged about it, but it's your hands don't move as fast as they used to. I was talking to someone at work about it. You just can't. When you were younger and your hands were better, you could do all these tricks, and it felt like nothing. It's like playing Mortal Kombat. And it's like put the finisher, and it's like ABB back. You're like, But now it's like trying to do a combo is just very hard to. It's very hard to do it. It's
so many days spent manualing and then just.
My brain is sending the message, but my hands are not doing it right. So Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Resident Evil 2, which we've also done a podcast on, which is just a great game.
That was also on my list.
Tetris, just
throwback.
Like probably the first game I ever had on the Game Boy, and just so good. So many Tetris hours plugged in.
Complete side note there, actually. So Tetris was definitely a game that I remember playing on the Game Boy, but I also remember playing a WWF game on a Game Boy, which wasn't in color. It was like one of the black and white ones.
Survivor Series.
I don't know what it was called, but
Nick,
when I was younger, like the game used to terrify me because of Undertaker's theme tune. Yeah, because it was like 8-bit or whatever it was, and it just sounded really piercing. That used to freak me out so much.
Undertaker is a scary phenom. It's true. Yeah. I just imagine little Nick being scared of Undertaker.
Of a Game Boy.
not actually Undertaker of a Game Boy. but not the actual Undertaker character, just the music. Yeah. I can imagine like Alex just like leaning in towards you with the music, just terrifying you.
Yeah.
So I also had GoldenEye on the N64.
Amazing.
Great game.
Great. Yeah.
And then the quadruple one was the Uncharted series.
Yes, I had that in mind.
Which Uncharted 2 easily could have gone into my top picks because I love it. But I was quite late to Uncharted, which is probably why, because I don't have a lot of like strong nostalgia feelings for it. But I do have one of my favorite weeks of my life, which sounds really lame. But I got the trilogy. I played Uncharted 1, but I'd never played Uncharted 2 or 3. So before they released Uncharted 4, I got the remastered trilogy. and my wife's sister, she had played them. I think she had played most of them before, and she was visiting. My wife was away. She was staying over, and we were like, okay, let's just play Uncharted 1, just get that done. And I was like, she was like, oh, she wanted to watch me play, and just like I used to with my brothers and stuff, she used to watch her brother play.
Cool.
And I had no idea that in pretty much all of them there was like some sort of monster type thing, or there was like a thing. Not in Uncharted 4 though.
No.
So every time when I was playing Uncharted 2 and 3, which are really strong games, I was like, what kind of monster is it? Like, there's no monster yet. She was like, I don't know if there is one. And then there fucking was.
Yeah.
Or something similar, but it was a really good, we did the all 4, like in that space of a week. And Uncharted 4 is a really, really good game, isn't it?
Yeah,
really,
4
really
is something I want to play again on the PS5 as well, just because visually it looks so good. And also, I don't know if you ever played it. Did you ever play Lost Legacy?
Yeah, I played Lost Legacy. Yeah,
I really enjoyed that as well. I was really surprised. I kind of went into it
because that's what we all thought Miles Morales was going to be like, same sort of length and stuff, didn't we?
Yeah,
but it was a bit longer. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Lost Legacy.
That's another one, is it? It's Naughty Dog, so it's really story driven, and like all sorts of the feels are going on throughout it. But it's a really good, really, really good series. And obviously now there's a film coming out with Tom Holland as Nathan, which is pretty awesome as well. So that's a really good series. And I think the only other one I had was Spider-Man, which I really like as well.
Yeah, that was close to making my honourable mentions. It didn't, just because the other games on my honourable mentions are like very intensely story driven.
Yeah.
So Spidey was close though, because it does give me one of, if not my favourite, Peter Parker animated film, movie, scene, whatever it is.
I'm surprised that we have Tony Hawk's on there. That's one that I wouldn't have thought would be on both our lists. I think it was a
period of time, like growing up around then. I think there was a lot of people who it was like their favorite game, or a game that they played.
Skateboarding was huge, wasn't it? For a period in time, like I mean, probably when we were both at high school and you were younger, and I was like in a few years old, big then, like going down to there was a shop in Stratford. I can't remember what it's called. Ziploc.
Yeah, Ziploc. Yeah, there was Ziploc on. Yeah, just throwback to Stratford.
I actually wish I used to have a really cool Blind. That was the brand, the skateboard brand, Blind and Toy Machine. I used to have those hoodies. I wish I had those. Now that'd be good. They wouldn't fit, but I wish I had them still. So
nice.
Cool. I mean, that's a good list. I think the only ones that I haven't played that were on there, I haven't played Alan Wake, obviously.
Yep.
And I haven't played the third Bioshock, and you hadn't really played Super Mario 64 or not much of WWF No Mercy, which I think we can actually agree is probably the most epic game on all the lists.
Yeah. So I've got 6 games on my.
Oh yeah, sorry,
list. That's all right.
Go.
So first of all, is a game called Singularity. It was one that loads of people missed. It's a first-person shooter, despite what I've just been saying about first-person shooters. But again, it does that same thing where it sort of takes you out of being the person in the game, and there's a moment in the kind of final act which really just clinches it for you. But the game is basically like it's a soldier of some sort, and you go to a like compound where there's been something going on, and then there's like an explosion, and your player seems to be able to manipulate time, so they can sort of like pocket through time kind of thing. And the game revolves around what it is that he's experiencing, what's happening. And yeah, when it gets to the final act, it just is this really kind of smart storytelling kind of moment. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Again, a game that very few people played, but really impacting in terms of an action shooter, is a game called Spec Ops: The Line. I expected nothing from this. It was when I was working at Game, came out, I think we got like 3 or 4 copies in, and I was like, it looks okay, I'll give it a try. Bought it, and it sort of does like the horrors of war, and it puts everything in context of being pretty grim, and pretty much like these are the consequences of what war does. It's just really good storytelling and a really fun kind of action game, but at the same time delivers you some really harrowing moments that have sort of always stuck with me a little bit. Like anytime I talk about Call of Duty or anything like that, Spec Ops is always the one that's in my head that's kind of like, that's the story you have to match if you're telling a war-based game. Vice City.
That's a good game as well. It was close on mine as well.
Yeah. Do you know what? It wasn't until earlier on when I was looking at Alan Wake, and then alongside it there was a video on YouTube which was just talking about Vice City, and I just clicked on it. And I was like, it just really captured a nice kind of like 80s open world. Soundtrack's great. There's some really cool missions on it, and I just remember being like obsessed with it as well in terms of just the art style. I love all the kind of visuals that they used for it. And
was that a launch game for the PlayStation 3?
No, I think it was still on PS2. I think it was like tail end of PS2. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that was really, really good. Loved Vice City. And then the last two are both very smaller games, but exceptional stories. So one is Life is Strange. I don't know if you
game.
That game. That, yeah, I played it when I was doing my MA because a friend of mine said you should try it because it's a really good narrative. And it did this kind of thing where I'd made a decision and then I instantly felt so bad for days because I'd made the wrong decision. And it just keeps giving you those decisions where you really just don't know what to do because you care about all the characters. But at the same time, I think it presents university in quite a cool way. There's a nice feel of the campus and student life and that kind of thing, mixed with this supernatural weird thing.
Yeah, it's a good game. I remember I played it. When was it out? Must have been
a few years ago.
Yeah. It's a really smart game. It's a good game. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, again, it's one of those games that I feel like a lot of people miss, but anybody who I know has played it have all kind of said, yeah, that was really, really good and very heartfelt moments between all the characters. And then the last one is an incredibly short game. It will take you about an hour and a half, 2 hours at most. But it's called What Remains of Edith Finch. It's like a indie game that
I've never heard of that game.
Yeah, it's pretty indie. I think Annapurna published it though, but it's like magic realism, and it's like you play as a character, and it is first person. So this is again going against my trend, but again, if you play it, it does the same thing as I've been talking about. But you play as this character who gets this journal, and it basically tells the life story of this family and this house that's stacked on top of it. It's like a house that's stacked layer and layer, and each layer is sort of different. And when you get into the house, you sort of find yourself going through these like nooks and crannies and little square spaces and stuff that just reveal different bedrooms and different kind of personalities. And with each one, you find like an object, which then tells the story about the person in that room.
Right.
And all of it is just emotional, character-driven story. All of it is just, you're really invested. And there's this story about this kid who sits on a swing and sort of swings back and forth, and you get to do that. And then at the same time it's telling the story, the words are sort of coming up, and every time you swing you sort of wipe away the words, and then eventually like this gust of wind picks up and the kid like basically blows away. And it's like this absolute turning point in the game where it's just like, oh my, what is going on? And the whole story is like this magic realism character study that just it's heartbreaking and original. I think that's probably the best way of describing it in my rant about it. But it's just a really, really good game. So if it ever comes up cheap on PlayStation, pick it up, because you'll complete it in like one sitting. It's that easy. But in terms of writing and a narrative and what video games can kind of do, I think it's a really good, like solid example of it. So
yeah, excellent. We'll check it out. It's a pretty good list altogether, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's loads I could mention. I was thinking like Breath of the Wild is fantastic on the Switch as well, and all the Zelda games I've really enjoyed as well. But my list would be massive if we just kept going on and on.
I think
which is why we could do a volume 2 one day of this video game. Obviously, it's going to be needed.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. All right. Well, that was our Video Games Volume 1 podcast. Our next podcast is going to be summing up Season 1 of WandaVision, which is just finished on Disney+. So we'll give a week or so for people to digest all of that, and there's a lot to unpack. So we hope you can join us for that, especially if you're a fan of the show. If you are a fan of this podcast, you can find us on Twitter at ConsistentlyPod. You can find us on all good streaming platforms, whether it's iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. So subscribe, leave a review if you can, if you are listening, because reviews really help us as well. And we look forward to you joining us next time on the Consistently OK podcast. So that's it for this episode. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, dude. Always a pleasure.
All right. Take care. Enjoy your PlayStation 5, you lucky bastard. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.